Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda. I am the co-founder and CEO of AI for Education. This is part of our AI Launchpad webinar series. So excited to have you all here. This is one that I've been thinking about for a long time, which is this idea of like what's actually happening at the district level. And so we've talked from the practitioner level in the classroom. We've talked about instructional coaches and leads. We've talked about all different types of opportunities, but we haven't really thought about it from a system level. And so today we're really going to focus on the system level approach. And so I have three amazing panelists here with me. I've got Samantha, I've got Patrick, and I've got Brett. These are people that I am so lucky to have be part of my network. Patrick and I met where we did a panel together at the AI plus EDU conference. Samantha is part of our Women in AI and Education conference group. And then Brett actually is the person that helped us get our first school ever, which is pretty amazing. So I don't think AI for Education would be the same without him and that connection he made. So really excited to have you all here. I see some early morning people in Sydney and people from all over the US. And so it's just really great to see our diversity. And what I love to see is that, you know, we want to always set the scene in the sense of this is a community. And so use the chat and the ability to connect with each other, to ask questions, to share resources. We're not going to do prompt engineering today, but we always try to complete something practical. So we will be talking about practical strategies. And the last thing is if you have a great resource, share it. We'll be sharing some, but we'd love to see that happen. And we are almost at the end of our first year of our webinar series. And so we have two more. So this today's is the K12 level perspectives, and actually deleted the wrong one. So sorry, Brian Eldridge, who will be doing a webinar next week that's really practical on differentiation strategies with AI. And then the last one is with Tom Vander Ark, who is, Tom and I spent 3 hours together yesterday in 3 different meetings. And so he is going to be talking with me around durable skills and the learning experience and how it's changed with AI. So without further ado, I'm really, really excited to have this amazing panel here with me today. I know how busy you all are and just really appreciate your time. And we always start the same way. So I'm going to start with Samantha. I'd love for you to give us an introduction about you and your first time using generative AI.
Sure. I've been in education for a really long time. I have a master's in elementary ed, one in educational strategies. I just completed my supervisory certification in curriculum and instruction, and I was in 5th grade teaching everything in Jacksonville, Florida. Then I was teaching ELA and social studies in Pennsylvania in Muhlenberg School District, where I am now. So this is my 3rd year as an instructional coach, and I'm also a virtual coordinator. So I've been basically working with our teachers and presented to our assistant principals in our county too. But the first time for ChatGPT was a little different. I came home, started to think about some different things over the summer as things were happening last year. And my husband was talking about a new job in sales. And he said, you know what, let's go ahead and check this out and just see if it works with me for outlining my approach for like, how do I build relationships? How do I build sales? What do I do? And we wanted to compare it to what the real world was saying and what that was saying. We did it with ChatGPT. We did it with Google Bard. We looked at a little bit of everything. And then just for fun, we made a grocery list for things under $200, then started to do different things with what if it was gluten-free? What if it was this? So nothing educational to start at all.
I always love it because it's like a Rorschach, right? Like, how do you use it? Do you come to it from your own perspective? Is it kind of a test? Is it something that you're using for your practice, et cetera? So now, Brett. So, Brett, do you mind answering the same question, introducing yourself and the first time you used generative AI?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Amanda, again for having me. My name is Brett Rower. I have worked in public education in New York City for 16 years, have worked in EdTech, and have become a really big evangelist of the power of AI. I first was really exposed to AI in early January at the DC Capital Region AI Education Summit. That's where they had hundreds of leaders convening. And it was the first time I really saw how you could use this in the classroom, how you could use this to support districts. And I thought about my building leader hat, how I could apply this. But similar to what Sam just said, most of my first interactions prior to that were, writing children's stories for my 2 young children, making workouts and seeing if it could do it quicker than my memory, asking for playlists for workouts or for a friend. So just really seeing what its capabilities were on a personal level, and then realizing the amazing power it has in the world of education pretty quickly thereafter in January.
It's great. You actually came to before I did. I was still kind of figuring out my life after 6 months of travel in January. So Brett knows more than I do, or at least started at an earlier stage, has been so supportive of. I know so many principals and leaders across the country, which has been really great. And the last is Patrick. So Patrick like almost got the latest arrival before a for a session. Dr. Philippa Hardman wins with 3 minutes before, but Patrick is an assistant superintendent. So the fact that he is here at all, we are very, very lucky to have you. And I think that your background as both a former technologist and also assistant superintendent really gives you, I think, one of the best handles on this moment in time of anyone I've talked to. So just really appreciate you being here and would love to know a little bit more about you.
Awesome. Again, Amanda, thanks for having me on as well. Really appreciate being on this panel and esteemed people you have here. Patrick Gatus Rubungo, longest last name in Linwood Unified School District. I got vials that you can buy. I'm selling it now. If you want to, sign up for my chatbot, I got gatusrubungo.gpt. I'm going to buy that domain name. I'm the assistant superintendent of technology and innovation with Linwood Unified School District here in Southern California. We have 12,000 students, 12 elementary schools, 2 middle and 2 high schools. My first experience with GenAI is probably a year from today, really working with ChatGPT, really understanding how it works, what it can do, how it can really write stuff for you, if you will, right? I did have some difficulty getting on because everyone was trying to get on that ChatGPT bot. I was like, what is this tool that's supposed to displace everything, that's supposed to generate all of these papers for you and write your essays and write your emails? So it's about a year from today. Again, I do think that AI is not new. We interact with AI on a daily basis, whether it's through your phone, through your maps. I had to use Google Maps to get here today. So again, we interact with AI all the time. Data is always, there's AI that curates your data as well. So whether you're shopping in retail, whether you're buying stuff for your kids or for your families this holiday season, that you're in someone's database because they're trying to make sure that they personalize the experience for you as a customer. So AI is not new. AI is here. My experience with GenAI was actually a year ago. So ChatGPT, and I'm excited to hear about Google stuff too today that just they announced. So anyways,
absolutely. Well, yeah, I mean, it's been a bit wild, and we always start with if you've got one of these, 84% of us interact with AI literally every day, whether it's your face recognition, and all those pieces. And I think that's an important way to start when we're talking about today, which is that while this has been, even a full year in, we're still really questioning what the capabilities are, what the impact will be. It is by far something that has not come from this magic. It is not fairy dust. It is not something that hasn't come from 60 years of content and development and thought and research. But what it has done is it has become a consumer-facing technology at a very early stage like never before. And so I think that is really why I think this is so important for us to talk at a system level, because it isn't something in which you can put on the shelf and say, okay, we're going to come back to this when the technology is safe and reliable. It's something that is happening at an uneven rate across your district already. So my first question is, Samantha, that everyone will have a chance to answer, is that what has been the impact of generative AI on your district?
Well, it kind of started with the secondary English department first, with the idea of how did these magical essays come to be in a couple of minutes when all of our Chromebooks are blocked from using it? And clearly we already know the answer to that. But one of them was really a funny anecdote where they were saying, this 11th grader was saying how they really, really love their college dorm room and they've just loved the experience of college. Remember, I said they were 11th graders. So that was a little bit easy to find without having to do anything else. But then the shift in that impact came from, okay, yes, while we started some professional development that's going to have to be flexible and work with different things, and the kids are supposedly blocked, but they're using their phones, they're using things at home. Let's use it as a starting point instead. And then how can you be ethical? How can you be responsible? How can you go from what you created and now what? And always think more critically anyway, because we want that no matter who you are. So instead of passive learners, which since COVID, that's been a really hard thing to get back, let's utilize that even playing field and then take it further. And once we said that idea, instead of they're cheating on that essay, yes, they're not in college, but they're also having a starting point they may never have had before. So now what can we do with that? So that's pretty much where we started with that impact, from the cheating to the, oh, maybe we can use this.
It's great. And I think that ELA teachers everywhere had a moment and maybe are still having a collective moment. And I think that what's happened is we've collapsed like this idea of generative AI into like it's a cheating tool. That still is the rhetoric even a year after. And so I'm really glad to hear that and we'll talk much more about how you did that, because there are a lot of districts that haven't been able to make that shift from that kind of, rhetoric to that action statement and that ability to start incorporating it. So I'm glad to hear you've done that. But so Brett has a bit of a different perspective, right? Because you're actually thinking about it from how do you connect ed tech tools that are building to pilot schools? How do you actually talk about adoption? So what's been the experience that you've had when talking to districts? Like, what is the general theme and experience of that is happening out there?
Yeah, well, I'm really fortunate that in the past few months, I've helped to spearhead an initiative in the state of Ohio with the nonprofit AI Education Project, AI EDU. And so I've been fortunate that I've been able to attend an AI summit that was held out in Butler County in Ohio, and got to speak with district leaders and county leaders and building leaders, as well as some educational teachers in their classrooms, really listening to what was that first moment of trepidation, what's happening, how are we reacting to it, and then what is the current needs. And for many folks out in Ohio, and then also recently getting to attend an AI conference in Hawaii and working with New York City leaders in person and virtually, it's kind of, there's two different points right now. There are folks who are now at the point where they're fluent and comfortable enough, and now they want to figure out how to empower the rest of their community while putting in those proper safeguards. And so they're looking for thought leaders to help them build that policy and make sure that they're really thinking through. And there's others who recognize they have to embrace this, but don't know where to start and are looking for those first initial steps. So that's really what I'm seeing on a national scale and it's not by any region, there's people in the same part of the country that are just at different points for whatever reason. And so I'm looking to support them in meeting them where they're at, getting them the tools and resources they need, finding those solutions, but most importantly, just getting people comfortable in recognizing whatever tool you start with, just embracing that this is here and having an open mindset about learning and sharing it with your whole district and community.
It's great. We see a lot of head nods because I think there's a lot of really like the idea that like we could be in a room of 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, and we have the same kind of scale of like never used it, use it all the time, hate it, love it. It's something that we can ignore to something like get on the bus and get run over. And I think that that's what's really interesting. But I think that your point of meeting like people where they are is so important, but it's something that's really, really hard to do at a district level because you have so many competing priorities. So now to Patrick, I know you guys are really on the forward foot on this and you have great staff around it, but I know that you also have similar struggles. So what actually has been the impact over the last year of generative AI in Linwood?
Yeah, I would say at an organizational level, it's had a profound impact. And what I mean by that is that from every layered approach that you take from the political landscape, like whether it's your board, whether it's your parents, your teachers, and your staff, along with your students and parents, it really making sure that the organization that everyone in the community, rallies around has a policy or responsible use plan in place is something that really is transforming organizations, right? It's allowing us to take a step back, take an inner look, and really identify those stakeholders in a way that really makes it inclusive, engages everyone in that process, right? And so we approach it three different ways, right? We really want to make sure that AI is responsibly used, right? We know that we have students and staff and parents that may use it for nefarious purposes. As the IT director as well, you have to make sure you watch for that, right? The second is making sure that the data that is put into these chatbots are protected, right? And so what keeps me up at night is if a teacher, a staff member, whoever it is putting like students' data, whether like you write me a IEP for Amanda Bickerstaff, who lives here and attends this school. That keeps me up at night. And so that training, that professional development of staff, students, just to make sure that data privacy, digital literacy is at the forefront for this AI wave is part of that. Then the last is making it's inclusive, right? So we know that it's going to create more gaps, right? The pandemic caused a lot of gaps. digital equity cause a lot of gaps, devices cause a lot of gaps, tools cause a lot of gaps. This AI is going to continue to exacerbate those gaps, right? It's going to be kids and staff and, adults and principals who know how to use AI and those that do not, right? So there's going to be some folks that, hey, I'm done with my school plan, right? Or I'm done with my district LEA plan or my, local control accountability plan because it's been written by AI, right? And so there's going to be others that, may be still like, struggling. And I don't know if I'm really comfortable in that. So across the spectrum, right, is how we're looking at and approaching it, really looking at every stakeholder, making sure that we do outreach, we do professional development, that we really plan for that. We have an AI task force that we formed, right, this year. And so we're meeting 4 times every other month. And so the first session is really around making sure that there's fundamentals. The second is really making sure we have ethics and oversight. The third is around equitable implementation. And then the last is really how you lead the transformative change that this tool is already going to be there. We've already talked about how AI is impacting economies, jobs, all that kind of stuff. So how is it impacting the workforce as well? And how are our teachers preparing our students for that? So that's how we're looking at it.
So I would say that to those of you that listen to Patrick and go, oh man, I'm on the earliest part of this piece and like this all sounds amazing. The one thing I will say is that we are all at different stages as well. And like Patrick is going to be on like Linwood is going to be on a very early adopter and very structured approach. But the things that I think we all can take from what we hear from everyone here is that this isn't something that is going to be a one and done. This isn't going to be something that you can do a PD, you can create a policy, you can walk away from. And whether it's one, whether it's every other month or it's a task force or what it looks like, I think the idea of longitudinal support and actual integration of this across the system is really, really important. And like I think that Patrick has identified a really wonderful way to do that. But I would also say that at this stage, considering what I see is that even if you do parts of this and start incorporating it as a change management process, which is what this is happening, that you're on the right path. And then like what we can do is we can start, like you can see like these best practices that we're sharing here to keep going. And I think that I think that sometimes what can happen is we think we have to be that great at the beginning, when actuality just kind of starting it and being willing to keep doing it is exactly what we need right now. And then we can share people that are doing this amazing work like we get to do today. So I'm going to actually go forward a little bit. We're going to skip a question because I want to get to the meat of the conversation, which is this idea of opportunities and challenges. And so I know a lot of people are struggling, especially at a system level, of getting started, which we just talked about, because it's really hard to understand what these tools will and can mean right now. So Samantha, you have a really good handle on, I love it. Like you actually do a great job of interrogating, ed techs and organizations, supporting your staff. But like, what do you actually think are the opportunities and the challenges of generative AI for your district?
Well, I think it kind of starts with what you've all said, that idea of you've got to meet everybody where they are and you need to give them the foundation. Like, what is AI, where you may know nothing, you're an expert user, but that's thinking educationally also, where our kids are never in the same place. So our educators are also going to feel that way. You also have that idea of bringing people along, but when you share that foundation, then you also know everybody's why is going to be a little bit different. So you need to make sure that you're really truly listening to your audience. So that could be the department, that could be the grade level, that could be the administrator, that could be working with somebody, just listening with the different pieces that are there. Like I sat with our assistant superintendent and his secretary, and we worked through prompt generation, just even that beginning piece, and did that with assistant principals and everybody. And we're all at such different places that we need to honor that and understand. I'm going to give you the foundation, and some of you are ready to fly, and some of you are just going to stay, just like Brett was saying, with that one tool that's going to make all the difference in the world. Whatever is going to be best practice and meet what your kids need and what your teachers need is where you want to go, but you need to listen first. So I think the biggest thing that I found that's a positive is, as we're sharing these things, like we share the tools, maybe 1 or 2 of them, and then we just sit and explore. And I ask for people to share with me, what do you need? What are you working on? Show one of those examples, and then just give time, because we always lose time. The biggest thing is that, as you said, it's not one more thing. It's not another initiative that's going to go away. And it's very easy to be jaded with that, especially since COVID, to worry that how do I balance all this? You're telling me take care of myself, but you're also saying take care of all of these social emotional needs. That where do I do that and honor my kids and also bring up that student achievement? So, I mean, the things that have been positive for me is just sitting with like the media specialist who said, how am I going to integrate my ISTE standards and my literacy standards for third graders? I'm like, here we go. And, just getting so excited, but again, listening first, because if I have that foundation, that's great, but that doesn't mean that's what you need. So I think starting out at that even playing field is great. And then really fine tuning it and personalizing it to your staff, who in turn can personalize it with their kids, depending upon where you are. One of the other things that was really neat was we worked with our L teachers, just even in the Magic Canva tools, where we were talking about things that we want to honor the native language. We want to make sure also that we're bringing them along in their levels of proficiency, and how the Canva Translate in 2 seconds was giving them things that they've always needed. It was giving them that text to image where you could have examples and not examples. So it was just exciting to see the light bulb go on and to know the things that they've always wanted to do, but they didn't have the time to do. Just fine tuning with a high school English teacher. She was working on a mock trial in Greek mythology. And she said, I'm really thinking about this idea, and here's my question, but I'm not getting a lot. I said, well, let's keep iterating your prompt and let's go further and further. And as she got more and more, it made so much more sense, because it isn't a Google search. It's a conversation. It's a thought partner. So I think those are the pieces that you find as you do it more, but not everybody is on the same playing field. But to wrap up with that, I apologize. The big challenge is that mind shift of moving from just one more thing to that idea of it's our thought partner for ourselves and for our students to think more critically. And if we remember everything we're doing is to be beneficial to our district, like ethically and effectively, then we can always come back to the true why of what we're doing and what our kids need.
That's great. And first of all, I absolutely love that you are like shot out of a cannon in sense of like all the positives, because I think sometimes it can be quite like we have all these challenges, and I'm sure you hear challenges all the time in your work. But the fact that when we talked about the prep before today, we're like, let's really focus on those stories, because I think we don't hear enough of those stories. We definitely don't highlight them. But I absolutely love that this is something that like you get to see those light bulb moments, because we often as leaders don't get to make things better for teachers. Like we definitely don't. Like we usually just have to give them more stuff, like, oh, here's this other thing you have to do. And that's why that thing is real. Like I'm just going to close my door and it'll go away. Like like that thing will go away, and it usually does, to be honest. But I think that this is a real opportunity by highlighting and showing that like actually I can make it better for you. You can find that thought partnership, that brainstorming partner, that getting started or refining the place in your like where you really struggle, which I really love that that's the place that you get so excited about. And I'm just really glad to have you here to be able to share that. So Brett, coming from like the more kind of like strategic place, when you talk to whether it's in Ohio or Hawaii or New York City, like what are those opportunities and what are those challenges?
Yeah, and I'm also going to keep it pretty optimistic, because I get to see it. I get to see people learn these things for the first time and make sure they leave these professional developments or sessions really excited for the next day teaching. And we all know, right, former building leader, that sometimes isn't the feeling you get when you leave a professional development. You feel that one more thing and you've just been given another task. So just to go over some of the positives I've seen. One, Sam already said it. First, you need to set the stage, right? You don't know exactly what your audience will be like, but finding great professional development thought partners, so AI EDU, AI for Education, making sure people just kind of get a sense of where we are right now, where the last year has gone, but also, the historical uses of AI. Then it's really important to give someone the opportunity to create and play. So in Hawaii, PlayLab did a hackathon with AI EDU and Teach for America. So here's a great example. I'm with a member of TFA's team who trains new teachers in Hawaii, and they serve, a very diverse population. One of the initiatives in Hawaii right now is bringing Native American cultural heritage into the curriculum. Now, we know that could live on paper and never be put into practice. So I just showed them really quickly how using ChatGPT, you can find the standards, embed them, and all of a sudden create engaging do-nows or very small, impactful projects in every subject area in Hawaii based on grade level. You could then up and lower the reading level. And this person was blown away because they've been trying to think about how do I embed that? And in a few minutes, they had a great source to start with, and that light bulb went off. So one of the things that when I plan professional developments with folks, like we're doing in Ohio, our first big professional development for all of the county leaders there, they call them ESCs, Educational Service Centers. We said our goal is that there is a light bulb moment for each of these people. We have to figure out how that light bulb goes off, that this will make me better at my job. And in the long term, it will make me more efficient at my job. And whatever that job is in education or role that you have, this can improve the quality of how you're engaging with whoever it is you're serving in education. So that's really where I come from, is trying to figure out what do you need to have that aha moment that will at least keep you excited and engaged enough to continue to persevere with a new technology. Last thing I'll say about how I try to capture the positivity of the power of AI. Whenever I see that light bulb, I try to immediately ask someone to quantify in minutes how much time this might have saved them tonight or tomorrow or so on and so forth. So if a teacher was like, oh, this just saved me 20 minutes and it's better than how I would have been able to scaffold or differentiate the exact lesson I was going to do tomorrow. I'd say, now imagine if you did that for 5 days. What would you do back with that 100 minutes next weekend? What would you do? And then if you extrapolate that over the course of a school year, I try to get administrators to think about that, or superintendents. That's really how I'm hoping people start to quantify and scale AI. You can do something better, save time, but then most importantly, what are you doing with that time to reinvest in yourself or the community you serve? That's where I hope we are going. So the challenge is, how do you do that at scale? How do you reach educators across the country at the district level in the classrooms? That's the challenge that I'm most interested in solving, is how do you scale those light bulb moments as quickly as possible in service of the greater good in education.
And I mean, that's Brett, that's the whole goal of AI for education. So we're definitely questioning that same way of like, how do we think about this at scale? And it's a really, really big question. So I think it's really one that I think we'll see more and more like opportunities to do that as organizations become more kind of, they grow too, which I think is really interesting. And PlayLab is one of our, we actually had one of our webinars where Ian came on and shared PlayLab. And I think we really like to see like educational, like tooling that is appropriate and available, which I think is a place that specifically that's also safe for students. And I think that actually is a place that we're still lacking in. And so, I think that there is a real question as well as like, how do you shift from the teacher leader perspective into like the supporting student perspective, which we definitely, if we have a little bit of a handle on how to do that with teachers and leaders, I think we have a very, very like much less of that for students. Okay, now to Patrick. So what do you think about those potential, those possibilities, those places to be optimistic, and then those places that we have some deep challenges?
Yeah, Amanda. So like Sam and Brett, I do agree there's a lot more positive than there are negative, but I'm going to be the naysayer in the room. So part of the challenge with Gen AI is that it's by definition biased, right? So the tool whoever developed it there's already going to be bias into the tool, right? So making sure that our staff, our students, our parents understand that the tool that they're going to be using has bias already built in. Now, how do you then adjust the way you prompt it, the way you do things, the way you articulate, how do you make things more efficient, right? So understanding that and making sure that you have, other ways of working around it, that's key. The second is around what Amanda, I think you and I relate on, is around data as well as impact, right? So every organization is really trying to develop what the impact is, what the efficacy is. So now that we have all these AI tools, we have these chatbots, is it making things more efficient? Yes, check. Is it making students more productive? Yes, maybe, right? But it also helps shift that conversation, right? It's about making sure that that human aspect of that dialogue of, teachers and staff reaching out to folks, like much more important than the AI tool itself, right? So, hey, everyone's going to be assuming that we have AI already built in, right? The email I sent to you, the letter I wrote, the recommendation, the plan that was submitted, then we're going to create this more suspicious society, right? And we're going to look at things and we're going to go, well, it really looks like AI. Gen AI wrote it. Oh, this resume looks like someone took that in Gen AI. This someone's cover letter was this, right? So I think we're going to have to start thinking about it as like every sector, every organization, even in education, right? So as I'm looking at letters, resumes, and all this stuff that's being written, like my radar is on, and I'm like, I think the AI wrote that, right? Let's meet this person and let's hear from this person, right? Same thing is going to happen with staff, with students, with parents, everyone, right? My AI is going to talk to your AI, and then what's going to happen then, right? It's going to have to be a dialogue. It's going to have to be that human aspect. It's going to have to be the experiences that really propel and move organizations forward, as well as school districts, right? Because schools and districts and like public education, that's like, it's magic, right? And the magic happens because of the interaction between teachers, students, parents, principals, everyone is involved, making sure that we want kids to thrive and really achieve, right? So I think it goes back to the basics, right? Great tools, great bookkeeping, great all that stuff, but what are we really using it for, right? So efficacy, impact, the stuff that you love, Amanda. And
I
that's
do.
yeah, yeah.
I feel like Patrick and I we're buddies on this. We're actually building, so Corey Lane Crouch is in the audience. We're building a responsible Gen AI framework where we're asking ed tech tools to actually talk about transparency around bias and hallucinations, models, etc. But I'm gonna ask Dan to put into the chat the video I did today on Gemini. So Gemini is the brand new release from Google, which has a lot of hype around being better than GPT-4. And there's a 60-page paper. And I'm going to ask Patrick, how many times was bias mentioned in that 60-page paper?
Probably like 1,000.
0 times. Zero times. Like there's a guy named Tobias. So if you search Tobias, there's one guy named Tobias. So hi, Tobias. But it has a section. So actually, before I did the video and like when I was thinking about doing it and before I fully read it today, I was like, oh, they talk about the training data. And when I read it, I'm like, how is it possible in this day and age? And if you are here and maybe you don't know as much about how large language models work, is that they're trained on the internet. And the internet, no one ever said the internet was an unbiased place. No one. Like I go to Reddit for balanced communication about both sides. Like this just doesn't happen. And there's both explicit and implicit bias. The thing that's crazy to me is that at this stage, we have a brand new model that's supposed to be best in class by Google, who fired someone when they talked about AI bias, so Tim Ritt, and they put out a paper today that does not once mention it. And so I think that when we talk about the challenges, there are distinct challenges that we have because these tools are not responsibly made and they're definitely not being made for schools. And so while there is an opportunity to embrace around efficiency, there are deep questions about reliability, about exacerbating or creating new biases, and also the idea that it actually can create spaces in which we don't actually know what the impact will be. So I think that really is something that we think about a lot in the work that we do, and why I vibe so much with everybody on this panel, because it is something that balance is really important, that we have to continue as leaders to have the strongest voice in this. And so I think that this is going to be really important. I'm actually going to ask, we're going to go a little bit off book. So I want to ask Samantha about you getting talking to Conmigo about what their tools actually done and how that interaction changed when you were equipped with good questions.
Well, I think the biggest thing is I was talking about the idea, I am part of decision making, but I am not the final decision maker. So that's something that's important, that when you're having those conversations, it's a wonderful thing to share and it's a wonderful thing to have a foundation. But then once I started to utilize a lot of those 6 questions that are in that resource for AI for education, the conversation shifted dramatically to wait. So a lot of people know, some people know, not many people have asked those questions, and it's exactly what needs to be done. It needs to boil down to, what are you ethically doing? What are you doing deliberately to make a difference, not to see how quickly you can get this out compared to somebody else? And it was a great conversation and very well received, but really necessary to have that conversation and just be really, really transparent as much as they can be.
Yeah, and I think this is, and Dan, if you don't mind dropping in the 6 questions resource, that would be great. And I think that sometimes in this moment, there's this speed towards building and like not actually slowing down enough to actually have deep conversations about what a technology should be for a classroom for students, for teachers. And I think we're just kind of speeding to this goal, and everyone's saying, okay, like generative AI is the thing, let's build towards that. So I think that's something that like we know more and more that like that's why that upskilling is really important. So we have lots of really good questions from the audience. So we're gonna spend like 5 more minutes, and I'm gonna do our like best strategies. Okay, so what are our best strategies for implementing? Like, so if you have, we know we have an audience, global audience, we have people that have never started, that are starting, those that are in like Samantha's point where you have to like, you need to manage up, like, and that's hard. And then you've got, all these different perspectives, but like, what is your kind of number one or two best strategies for the people that are watching today?
Any order, Amanda?
Why don't we go? Why don't we go Patrick first, and then we'll go Brett and Sam. We'll stop. We'll end up. Yeah, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I would say start small, right? So like with anything, always start with a pilot. Identify teachers, staff, adults, principals, whoever it is, to champion the cause. And really identify some use cases, some examples of AI being used, some best practices across the board. That would be the first. I would say listen, right? And really respond to any of the questions that come up from anyone, right? For all your stakeholders that are in your organization. And then really make sure that you also figure out ways to measure efficacy. I'm going to bring that back up again because like your return on your investment, your time, and like, again, gaps exist, right? And so how are you going to what does success look like for you as an organization, right? Making sure that you have, your future state, your current state, and really wrapping those two together. And so that way you're able to start showcasing, this small pilot that you started. So, and then also, again, embrace failures as well. So I think it's important to say, oh, well, this task force or this group wasn't the right fit. Let's figure out, maybe this is another group. Maybe it's the English teachers, right, that we need to work with. Maybe it's the math teachers or this school. So I would say start small, embrace failures, and really stay focused around efficacy.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that we need to give our English teachers a hug. I think we need to give them a collective hug because this has been a year. And so every English teacher in the world, we feel you, we care about you. We're sorry this is complicated and that you guys are the first line of defense. But I so agree, Patrick, like it's just about getting started. And like I think it's so fun to break ChatGPT, to like do things that don't work, that like it can be really, really fun. And like, I'm telling you right now, like starting small and even being willing to talk to students about this. Like, I know we avoid talking to students about some things because of inconvenient voice. Like, we're not sure what they're going to say. But I'm telling you right now, starting small and having those conversations with students, you're going to be blown away. And so I love that that is something that I know that you guys incorporate, that student voice component in the work that you do. And I think that like it's such a great like way to get people talking. And like, it is something it's a weird moment. We're in a weird moment, guys. Let's be weird together. So Brett, over to you after that.
Great segue. So, first of all, couldn't agree more with Patrick, starting small, and yet I find myself working on a whole state initiative, one of the first in the country. So we are next week having the first time having folks from each ESC come together for a virtual PD. And so when we were planning that, we actually did think about one of the long-term goals by the end of this school year is to have identified 1 to 2 AI champions within each ESC. So when you actually take that across the whole state, you're only really talking about 50 to 100 people. Now, though, you have someone at each county that can become a train the trainer, that can become that voice that continues the work forward. And now you're not thinking state by state, you're thinking county by county, and then district by district, and so on and so forth. So no matter where you're starting as a district leader, if you're part of the audience that is making that up tonight, still think about who are you trying to build capacity for? And then most importantly, start small in terms of what you hope to achieve. So the audience, whether, again, you're trying to train the district level, the school level, the classroom level, make sure in that first iteration, it is fun. Do things that you're always tasked with, right? Creating a positive culture, embracing learning, embracing your successes. Figure out what that looks like in the environment that you are in charge of leading. But I would definitely say create a playful experience around AI. There's no harm in this You can only get better. And as I hear often, this is the worst version of AI we're ever going to encounter, right? This is like beta compared to where we're going to be in a few years. So embrace that. This is going to keep changing. And then the last thing I would just say in terms of starting small is really make sure you, again, think of at the end of that session, professional development, what is something someone tomorrow could do and make their day just a little bit better? You don't have to change the world of education or what your classrooms look like. We know that's what fails in most initiatives and professional development settings. Don't go too fast with this. Make sure you're listening to your audience and capturing what's one thing that is a current pain point for you, and figure out how to use AI to make that a slightly better experience for them. That will just overall make them more apt to want to continue this learning process along with you.
Absolutely. And we see that value creation is like so important. Like if you can show value to an educator, we are educators. What do we want to do is educate. And so like sometimes we have a convincing, like we need to convince, but we did a PD in Glasgow. So our fifth country, which is super cool. And they were really nice to give us feedback on the session. And like out of the feedback, there were like 5 times that the teacher said, I now see the value for my students. Like I was scared of doing this with my students because they found value in themselves. So I think this idea of like finding that thing that's going to, like, if you hate rubrics, or you don't like, you have newsletters, or you need to think about like setting out a plan, or you don't even have a good idea for your, the bulletin board if you're an elementary school teacher. Like these are the opportunities. But like when that happens, like where do we transfer that to the bigger thinking in terms of what's going to do at the student level? Because again, that is where we really need to start going more and more, especially as we get into the next semester. So Samantha, you're gonna close us off before we go to the question. And we have so many good questions, but if you have time, if you have questions, please put in the Q&A and then we'll make sure that we get to them. So Samantha?
And it is coming down to that district level. So it's kind of a neat place to think, like, what's that one administrative task that you need, but collaboratively talk to your grade level, talk to your department, what will make the bigger difference for us? Because again, we're not isolating ourselves, just having a conversation with the chatbot. We're actually sharing that information and working with other people. But then from the kid point of view, they love poking holes in things. They love telling you something's wrong. They love to go back and say, okay, so this is what and then you name the tool, provided for us. But now let's change the point of view. Or debate IO, like, let's just go ahead and say, we think that, self-driving cars are great, but the Department of Transportation in Pennsylvania doesn't. Go. And then it's conversations, it's speaking, it's listening, it's critical thinking that kids that never maybe knew where to start, now they have a reason. They have the novelty and the variety. A teacher, I can think of myself when I was trying to differentiate things. I said, this is awesome. And in my real-time data, I'm going through what everybody needs. And then that lasted for X number of minutes. And now I need to do that again. But now I could do that with the framework that I know I can work from to really, truly meet those kids' needs. So I think get that administrative task, get that one strategy that takes you way too long, but is going to make a big difference in your kids' lives. Go there to start, and then work towards the other pieces. But just look at it as the guidelines and the guardrails, because to say it's static, it clearly isn't. It's going to keep on moving, and we need to be flexible, but understand what the why is and what we really need to accomplish for our kids and for our staffs.
Yeah. Oh man. So I agree completely. And I think that this is the unique place we're in, right? Because it is like, there are so many different approaches, but I think that there's a real, like, use us as your, like, whether it's Brett working with, the kind of strategic level, if it's Samantha and it's Patrick working at like the actual like school and district level, there's a huge theme of like, let's just get started and like find the way in. And like, if you find the way in, then you could really extend and expand and like have a longitudinal piece. Like I started to think about us at AI for Education as change managers. Like I never thought that's what we were trying to do, but like it feels like a change management process. And I think that that's what we're talking about. And a lot of times with change management, the worst thing you could possibly do would come in and say, here, suck it up. Everyone just like, you just got to do it. This is it. And like, this is what it is. And like, especially when we have so much noise. So I think that like if you have to head off, because I know we're coming to the 45-minute mark, I hope you feel inspired by this panel in terms of like, we're all at different stages, but there are so many ends to this, and that the more that you can do it in a consistent and systematic way that prioritizes and privileges failure and experimentation and value creation and efficiency, you're in your best possible spot to really start to rethinking what this is going to look like in your education system going forward. So thank you everybody for joining. If you have to head off, we totally understand. If you can stay, we have so many good questions. And so we have a lot of good questions and we have 15 minutes. And so we're going to start with a question from Amanda. And so she talks about we speak to those who are hesitant to use GenAI because they fundamentally do not believe it's ethical because of the actual training models, right? Like these models themselves are really deeply potentially harmful about the way that they've been created. So I'm going to go to either Brett or Patrick, who I feel like would want to answer this. So and Samantha, if you also want to answer, but does anybody have a strong want to answer this?
Yeah, I would say, we conducted a speed debate on AI ethics in our first task force, just so you know. And so I would ask the question back is, are you comfortable with AI being used in the healthcare industry? Are you comfortable with using AI for personalized marketing? If you aren't, or you are, I'm going to keep asking those questions because AI is in everything, right? So whether or not you're not comfortable with it now, you're going to have to, because it's in your phone, it's on your computer, it's everywhere. Like, you think about it, cameras that are in stadiums, cameras that are out in community, they're AI generated as well. So I would say, let's have that discussion. Let's have that debate, because that's where it's at. AI is here.
Yeah. There's a little bit of like, so Patrick is on the, get on the bus or get run over a bit, a little bit.
Sorry.
It is real. No,
Yeah.
It is real. I mean, some of this is just like straight up pragmatic. Like if you search for a pair of pants on like Amazon and you suddenly see pants everywhere, that is artificial intelligence. And like and it's been around for a hot minute. And if you're comfortable with Amazon serving you, maybe you're not, but maybe you at least accept it. Like it's different, but it's that same foundation. So I think that, sometimes we have to call it like it is.
Yeah, I want to echo something. So Patrick said this earlier, right? The biggest challenge amongst many is the biases that are embedded into AI. So I want to address this question by thinking from two perspectives, right? One, this is a mindset. There is inherent biases across education and in society. I was a social studies teacher across New York City, teaching a curriculum that wasn't very inclusive to a population that none of the students could relate to the people that they were learning about in history. So this is not a new issue in education. We also, though, for the first time, like, I couldn't rewrite that history book. I would have to find resources outside of it. I now can use AI to actually create inclusive stories that are representative of the populations that I serve. I know we all know this, but you can actually create translations for students. You can use colloquialisms from their native parts of the country, right? So Spanish obviously has variations depending on where you live. You can write things for that student and ask it to use expressions from that part of the country. Is it perfect? No, but better than mine. And also highlighting the fact that you also can be part of that change by being very intentional about what you put into that AI tool. So you can state, for example, we know this, or maybe not everybody, but if you use DALL-E and you ask for certain professions, you are going to get very skewed gender and cultural pictures that are just, biased and, sexist and racist. And so you can write those things in your prompts stating, I would like you to create a picture that looks like this, because these are members of society in these roles. And it's a small part to play, but it's a way you can show even students what is a cultural biases right now around this field. How can you make sure that like you can train AI, or how would you make a chatbot and have those culturally relevant discussions? So anyway, I just want to say, meet people where they are, show them also. The last thing I'll say is AI does have some things that are not biased. So just for example, grammar and fluency rules are not biased. So showing someone like you can use this as a way to get your students from here to here. Meet them where they are and what they do accept as technological improvements, and then show them the other tools. But yes, go slow. You're not going to change mindsets overnight around AI, but use the power to convince them that they play a role in where AI is going.
Yeah, and then there's another question. I'll just kind of quick answer in the sense of this idea of like, do we have questions in terms of students thinking critically around these tools? And one of the most important things we can do is actually show students hands-on. Like I did a video where I uploaded my image to GPT-4 Vision, and it told me like that I should smile less, and talked about my hair healthiness, and I should remove my freckles, and that like Dan was the CEO, not me. And the kids that I showed that to, the level of like absolute like horror and like it stopped them in their tracks, and they were like, I need to think about this differently. And I think that that is like, it's hard to talk about bias because it's everywhere, and it's sometimes it's explicit, sometimes it's harmful, a lot of times it's harmful. Let's just say it's mostly harmful, if not always harmful. But like it's hard to see and understand, but like you can actually show someone what American bias is through the models that have been created. And I think that that is like actually really interesting, because I think we've never been able to do that, but now you could do it. Like there's so like there's a meme right now, that little thing where make it the most Turkish or whatever, and it is so racist. And also deeply misogynistic and sexist, like it's never a woman, that kind of thing. Like something like that can really like create these spaces where students really understand what this means in a deep way. Okay, so I'm going to go to Samantha. There's a question about like from Rob about shifting from this idea of assessment as a final product that students submit to assessment as a process. And like, how do you think about that when you're thinking about instructional coaching around the integration of AI into actual assignments and supporting student learning?
Well, I think when you look at it as the process, where especially for writing, teaching writing can be painful when it's not concrete to them. They don't understand why this step means this. When you say to revise it and hand it in, that means write it more neatly or type it again and just change a word. And so now you're saying, okay, let's just focus today on this one piece, and iterating with them. Okay, what if we change the tone of this? They may not have ever known what tone was before, but this is suspenseful. No, this is this is. So now you're also utilizing the vocabulary that they're going to need to use in their own writing. And then you're changing, whether it's point of view, whether you're walking through those ideas, but you're showing them those things. And they're actually physically seeing those things happening, and then giving them time. Okay, now for that one little piece, you're chunking this. You're working in that process way instead. So here's where I started. Here's where I ended up, and reflecting throughout, which we always want them to do anyway. Turn to a partner, talk to them. This is why I added this. This is why I changed that. I'm not sure what to do here, and have those conversations. So yes, you're using it to reiterate something, but you're also continuing to get them to push themselves further and say, this is a great starting point. I never would have known where to begin. Now this is where I'm going to take it, and giving student voice to something that they may never have wanted to, because they wanted to just sit back. They didn't want to talk about it, but now they can have that conversation and say, here's why this is mine. And that's a completely different way of looking at things that maybe they never felt comfortable with trying before.
Absolutely. I mean, just the safe spaces to land are really interesting with this, and even differentiating where, you know, if you could give everybody like a ChatGPT pass. Like we'll say they have 13 to 18-year-olds with permission, with training, and you say you get to use it once in an assignment. But if you really struggle with getting started, I'm totally okay with you using it for thesis statements, but you have to tell me your decision making. But if if you have trouble with like the actual body, then you're gonna I want you to help use this. Take your really well-formed, you know, your thoughts, and help you put it into something more refined. Or if you need some help with editing. And I think that that's where we can even differentiate support and have students make choices and help them make choices and learn to understand what they need the help with, which is also really hard to do. Like I think we get to college and we don't actually know what we do well and what we don't do well, right? Like we're like surprised that it's like, oh, without support, I actually really can't start a paper. This is why nothing we do is paper. I didn't know that until I went to college. Let's just say that. But I think that this is really interesting in terms of like how that can be really strategic and like reshifting like what learning is and what support is. So we have some more questions, and we're going to do a little bit of rapid fire. So I'm going to ask one of you each of these questions, and if you hate it, you can pass it. Okay, so the question from Jane is very, very tactical. Like, what do you think about like actually mandating AI literacy and like a number of PD hours on AI? What do you think? I'm going to go to
Patrick. Agreed. Yes, let's do it. California already mandates it now too. So Yep.
How much do you think, if you're going to give a number?
Let's say number on PD hours, like 4 hours.
We got a Brett. Brett got a, ooh, that sounds big. What do you think, Samantha?
Well, I do think that we need it. And I would say at least that amount of time, because I know that when I've talked to the assistant superintendent, he was saying, let's get everybody to have that foundation. Let's just start there so that conversation can begin. And it is a necessity to have just that common ground.
Absolutely. Okay, so Nick asks, and I'm gonna go to Brett. Do you foresee districts implementing ChatGPT and similar popular LLMs with students and teachers, or purchasing specific education tools that utilize AI?
Yeah, so I think this is one of the more fascinating things. I'm excited to see where the next few months go, because so many EdTech companies and so many solutions have embraced AI in a good way, right? They're trying to make their solutions better, more personalized for student learning and for teacher support. However, there's also now, again, we've named so many innovative free resources that people can kind of make those on their own. Not everybody has that skill set right now, but the fact that those can now be like open sourced and free is a really interesting point in society, especially in the educational space, where you might not need to have these large district contracts and purchasing orders, because some of those things can now be created through ChatGPT very simply. And once someone does that and is able to share that in a way that's replicable, maybe TikTok, like it's going to scale, and teachers are going to go to that before they go to those large district partnerships. So really interested to see where that goes. Amanda, there's one thing I want to say about that last thing you just asked about the number of hours. I don't have an answer for the number of hours, but PD cannot be talking at people about AI. The number of hours that matters is how much time are you giving them to play on AI, not how much time are they sitting in a conference room or in the cafeteria, the auditorium, having someone tell them about AI. So that's what matters to me. I hope California's doing that.
I totally agree. I mean, we will not do a first intro, A, under 75 minutes, and B, without hands on keyboard. Like, even if someone is willing to pay us, and of course, if you would like to pay us, we're very happy to do that. But because of that, like, it has to be hands on keyboard. We refuse to do that because it's to Brett's point, it has to be hands on. Okay, last question, rapid fire. A lot of policies at schools are deficit based. How can we make it asset based? Anybody want to take that? How do we frame it more positively? I can always answer too, as a person that's thinking about policy all the time, depending on what you guys want.
I think we got to create a culture of making sure that we identify the strengths in our kids. The culture starts with the behaviors and actions of the adults in the room. So if the adults in the room don't have that mindset, out. So that they don't need to be there. So why are they in public education in the first place? So that's the first thing I would say. So sorry, it's a rapid fire, guys.
No, I think it's absolutely, I mean, it's real. Like, I totally agree. Like, I think that we need to be realistic, but like also it's about a culture of change and openness. And I think that we're going to learn a lot about where schools are based on the next couple of years in terms of like who is taking the risks, who is like redefining learning, who is creating more asset-based or strength-based approaches to these tools. And I think that's just really interesting. And so I'm going to stop there, because let's stop with an area of strength, because I think this is an opportunity. This is why we love this series. So first of all, thank you to everyone on this panel. Not only am I so privileged to have you part of my community and people that I consider very important and in the world of education, but also as part of the AI for Education journey. Just really appreciate that. But I hope that everyone in the audience, I want to say thank you to you as well, because I know your days are busy, but I just want to say thank you to everyone here for sharing your insights, for being practical, and for saying that, you know what, there's actually not one way. There are many ways. So to find that way in, that small step, that way to make things better for once, that's what we want. So just thank you to everyone for here. Everyone at home, go to bed if it's too late. If you have a day ahead of you, enjoy. Like, if you're ready to have dinner, do that as well. Just really appreciate everybody, and hope to see you at our next webinar. Thanks, everybody.